Thieves Can Be Heroes, Chapter 5. You seriously decided to show up to school this late on your first day? Izuku could only wince at Kawakami's words, her tone dripping with disappointment. Izuku hadn't been looking forward to seeing his teacher so late in the day, but he couldn't just not show up. So he decided to face the music. This kind of thing bothered Izuku more than usual, probably because he was still incredibly tired from what most of his day had turned into. He had to agree with Ryuji on one thing. It really was a pain to survive such a harrowing experience and then go to school. Still, Izuku knew he had to do what he had to do. It was definitely strange to go from worrying about whether or not you're going to die to worrying about what your teacher and classmates would now think of you. I'm sorry, Kawakami-sensei. The train was running really late because of all the accidents. Izuku lied, knowing that anything else he would say would most likely be brushed off. Even this was pushing it. To show his remorse, he deeply bowed to the teacher. It's true that the trains have been running late because of all the incidents. Kawakami trailed off for a moment before fixing him with a small glare. But still, it would have been faster if you just walked to school rather than waiting for the train to show up. True, Izuku muttered, scratching the back of his head. But I don't really know the area very well, and my phone's map is... Save it, alright? Kawakami huffed, shaking her head. Look, this is more about you than it is me. You shouldn't show up so late on your first day like this, especially if you don't want to start rumors about you. Right, Izuku muttered, unable to look his teacher in the eyes. He felt terrible about lying like this, but there was no helping it. You also happened to show up around the same time as Sakamoto. Did you run into him? Izuku felt a bit of sweat rise from that question. Yes, Sakamoto-senpai helped me find the school. Izuku technically wasn't lying this time. The blonde had definitely helped him in that regard, among a great deal of other things. Really? Sakamoto did, said Kawakami. That's almost hard to believe. He's got a reputation as a real troublemaker around the school. Ditching classes, dyeing his hair. While it's nice that he did that for you, try not to get involved with him. Kawakami's eyes fell to the side, almost looking sorry for Ryuji. Although, he wasn't like that when he was keeping busy with the track team. Track team? Is that the reason why there's a history between him and Kamoshida-sensei? What happened? Kawakami considered the question for a moment before sighing. We don't really have time to go over that. Just try not to hang around that kid, okay? Standing from her seat, the teacher grabbed several papers. The break period is about to end. We'll be headed to your 5th period class once it's over, and I'll introduce you to your classmates. Also, because of the train accidents, class will end after 5th period. Try to head straight home afterwards, okay? Sakura-san sounded pretty upset when we notified him of your tardiness. Oh, right. Izuku had completely forgotten about his guardian. He hadn't wanted to disappoint the man who was kind enough to allow him to stay at his restaurant, and things had been going pretty well so far. No doubt this would cause a bit of friction. Anyways, let's get going. As it turns out, you're going to be in my first year homeroom. Lucky me, Kawakami explained, muttering the last part loud enough that Izuku heard her still. But that's not your next class. I'm just guiding you to it. Izuku nodded, and with that, the two finally departed. The bell had rung for the end of break, so it was good time for them to leave now. As they passed through the hall for the stairs, Izuku didn't miss it when other students stopped to stare at him. He couldn't hear what they were whispering, but it definitely making him more uncomfortable. Why would anyone actually notice me? I might be new, but nobody should know about it yet. It wasn't long before they reached the classroom on the 3rd floor. Izuku gulping the moment it came into view. He was already bad at dealing with his classmates. His previous ones had been no better than Kachan when it came to bullying him, all because he was quirkless. Try not to attract attention to yourself, okay? Just looking at how skittish you are, I doubt you'd want everyone's eyes on you, Kawakami advised, turning back to Izuku and crossing her arms. So when you get called up to talk, try not to stutter so much and keep your introductions short. Right, I'll do my best to keep it brief, Izuku nodded, nervousness starting to reverberate through his body. Kawakami watched him for a moment longer before releasing a small sigh and shaking her head. You're going to have a tough time, kid, she muttered before sliding the door to his class open. Thankfully, they had a head start on most of Izuku's class. Only a select few were in their seats and chatting casually among themselves. Good luck in there. Thank you for your help, Kawakami-sensei. Izuku bowed in appreciation before walking into the room. The teacher watched him for a moment longer before sighing, closing the door and taking her leave. To be honest, she felt bad for the green-haired teen. Part of her wanted to help him out, but she couldn't. Not after what happened with the first child she tried to help. She could never help a student out like that again. Izuku slowly moved to the back of the class. He would have to move once all of the students arrived, but for now he wanted to keep a low profile. It didn't seem to work, though, as a small group of students already gathered. They suddenly went silent around him. When they thought he was out of earshot, they started to whisper. He could make out small phrases, the first few being transfer student and plain looking. That was the normal reaction he expected when he first arrived in class. But one sentence among them left him in complete and utter shock. He's definitely the one with a criminal record. What? How? Izuku thought with dread. His palms and forehead were already glistening with sweat. How did they know about that? As students started to walk into the class, Izuku noted one by one how each student looked at him. It had been painful enough to have peers look down on him for being quirkless, but this was totally different. To be feared as a criminal or some kind of villain who was just going to get thrown in jail. It hurt Izuku more than anything. He wanted to help people. He wanted to be a hero who could make people smile like All Might. Now everyone around him just thought of him as a two-bit thug. Izuku had somehow gotten through his class in silence, only speaking at the front when the teacher made him greet his classmates. But he became dead to the world as soon as he returned to his desk. Once the bell rang, Izuku robotically stood from his seat and walked out of the classroom. He didn't bother trying to listen to those around him, nor did he care how the other students scooted out of his way or sped up if he seemed to be walking behind them. How did it happen? How did it get leaked on my first day here? Izuku had been struggling with that thought for the entirety of class. He just wanted to get through the school year in peace, but it seemed that some terrible higher being had it out for him, who couldn't even have the semblance of peace. His experiences in that cognitive world only served to compound his misery. He was overflowing with questions about the nature of the place, and there weren't enough answers to satisfy him. You look like you're having a difficult time. Izuku stopped when he heard a girl speak around him. He lifted his head to look around, spotting a girl around his height with brown hair that reached down to the nape of her neck. Normally, Izuku would be freaking out at the prospect of a girl talking to him, but his mind was too muddled by his trying day to think about that. In fact, he thought that she was talking to someone behind him, and only turned away to keep walking. I was talking to you. Izuku hesitated after a moment before looking back at her again. Inspecting her more closely, Izuku realized that she had looked very familiar. Her piercing red eyes were definitely something that made him feel nostalgic. Kacchan had red eyes, and so did... Can I help you? Izuku stuttered out, shaking his head of his previous thoughts. He doubted that he'd see her again. It was unlikely. Maybe even impossible. That's it? She asked, raising a brow in disbelief. That's all you have to say? Izuku was now beginning to set aside his questions, feeling the pressure of her gaze as his eyes started to widen in nervousness. I mean, what? I don't... Izuku was floundering in his own embarrassment, making exaggerated hand movements and vain attempts to articulate himself. The girl merely watched him with wonder before she started to smile, holding a hand up to her mouth and beginning to stifle her laughter. Izuku's cheeks flushed as she continued to mock him, turning to the side and hoping he could escape the girl before she was done laughing at him. I see you're still bad at talking to girls, Midori. Izuku immediately stopped when he heard the nickname for him. Only one person had ever called him Midori, and she had red eyes like that too. Quickly spinning around, the green-haired teen's jaw dropped. The girl, Makoto Nijima, offered a kind smile. Koto-San? Izuku exclaimed, feeling a mixture of emotions well up inside of him. Makoto had changed from when he last saw her. She was taller, slimmer, more mature, definitely more girly than he remembered. Surprised to see me in something that isn't a t-shirt and shorts? Makoto asked with a small smirk of amusement, walking up a bit closer to Izuku to talk. You're really here? Izuku blurted out, still in a bit of disbelief. When I left, I told you that I wanted to go to a more academically focused school, didn't I? Makoto pointed out, placing her hands on her hips. Shujin might seem normal, but its accelerated programs are top-notch. I see. Wow. Izuku muttered, straightening up and looking over Makoto for a moment. Still, I can't believe I ran into you here. Yes, well, you weren't the only one surprised to realize we were going to the same school now. Makoto giggled with a small smile. It slowly started to fall, her eyes becoming more sullen as she continued to speak. But from what I've heard, your circumstances are rather... What happiness Izuku might have had before vanished into thin air, a heavy frown forming on his lips as he looked down at the ground. So you heard, huh? He muttered out dejectedly, dread filling his voice. Makoto wringed her gloved hands, struggling to formulate a response. I saw your criminal record, Makoto admitted, her voice softening quite a bit. I couldn't believe that the sweetest kid I've ever known had somehow ended up with an assault charge. It was complicated, Izuku admitted, unwilling to look back up at his longtime childhood friend at first. But what I really want to know is, how did it get out? Why would someone do that to me? Tears threatening to spill from the corners of his eyes yet again. Makoto immediately regretted bringing up such a sore subject. Izuku had obviously been met with strange looks of ridicule already. She wanted to reach out and place a comforting hand on his shoulder, but hesitated. I'm sorry that someone did that. I really am. I wish I knew who did it, but hey! Both teens blinked when they heard a familiar voice. Izuku immediately looked up to see Ryuji some ways down the hall, glaring at Makoto. Why you bothering my pal here, Miss Student Prez? Makoto raised a brow in question, turning her attention away from Izuku and crossing her arms. Ryuji Sakamoto, Shujin Academy's most infamous troublemaker. I didn't realize you two were acquainted. Sakamoto-senpai, it's okay. Izuku suddenly spoke, moving between the two and holding his hands up. Koto-san is an old friend of mine from before I started school here. He quickly explained, wiping his eyes of any tears. Ryuji awkwardly shuffled his feet and rubbed the back of his head as he realized his mistake. Oh, my bad. Didn't realize you knew anyone here. Sorry for interrupting you. Ryuji cleared his throat before looking at Makoto. Sorry. He started to walk forward before placing a hand on Izuku's shoulders and leaning in close. Meet me up on the roof. I want to talk about what happened. Izuku widened his eyes when he heard Ryuji whisper, but gave a small, almost unnoticeable nod. Even with everything that was going on right now in his school life, he would not ignore everything that just happened. With that, Ryuji took his leave, walking past the two and heading up the stairs of the third floor. First Baka-chan and now Ryuji Sakamoto? You certainly have a penchant for picking rather energetic friends, said Makoto, drawing Izuku's attention back to her. Izuku could only laugh sheepishly at that, scratching the back of her head. You might not be wrong about that, Izuku admitted before clearing his throat. Sakamoto-senpai is a really nice guy, though. I met him on my way to school, and he helped me get here. In what little time they knew each other, Ryuji had tried to save him and stuck by his side even when it could have gotten him killed. It was safe to say that Izuku could trust Sakamoto and even maybe call him a friend. He was still nowhere near as rude as Kachan anyway. I see, Makoto hummed and thought before sighing, shaking her head. Just try to be careful, okay? It's bad enough that, you know. Izuku didn't need her to elaborate on that point. His gaze drifted to the floor again, eyes half-lidded as he sighed. I think that, at this point, it wouldn't really matter who I spend my time with, Koto-san. He then looked up and gave a small smile. Besides, Sakamoto-senpai is pretty cool. Makoto opened her mouth to try and argue, but decided against it. If Izuku was able to make a friend despite the circumstance he was stuck in, who was she to argue? Still, Makoto couldn't help but act on the protective instinct she felt after seeing Izuku. Giving a small smile, the third-year student nodded in understanding. I see. Well, Midori, I want you to know that if you need anything at all, she reached out and placed a gentle gloved hand on his shoulder. You can come to me with it, okay? Izuku felt a smile tug at the corner of his mouth, nodding in appreciation. Okay, I will. Thank you, Koto-san. It's really nice to see you. Despite the fact that Makoto was a girl, she was the only one he had been comfortable talking to when they were younger. Even after so much time, he still felt comfortable talking to her now. Nodding, Makoto gave a small smile before turning to take her leave. As she shot further down the hall, Izuku decided to head up to the roof. Oh, before I forget, Makoto spoke up, causing the green-haired teen to pause and look back. I know things between me and him were strained at the end, but how is Baka-chan doing? Izuku would have laughed after remembering her derogatory nickname for Bakugo. But the news he had to give her wasn't very good. He scratched the back of his head and sighed. Kachan, he was really hurt when you left. He started to act like a real bully again. Not the same way as before, but he just seemed to always be mad. Makoto frowned after hearing this, casting her eyes to the floor in remorse. I see. Thank you for telling me that. With that, Makoto departed. The news didn't seem to sit too well with her, but there was nothing to do about it. Kachan was probably going to UA anyways. They both wouldn't see him for a long time, if at all. Though Izuku guessed they would see him in the news someday as the next big hero. Izuku slowly opened the door to the rooftop, hoping that Ryuji really was the only person there. When he saw the spiky-haired blonde, he relaxed a little and walked in, closing the door behind him as he did so. Hey, Sakamoto-senpai. Glancing around, he saw on the roof was fairly plain as well. There was a tall safety fence on the outer edge of the wall, likely to keep students and whoever else from sitting on the edge. One thing that stood out was a small garden box in the corner, filled with greens and freshly watered soil. "Hey, Midoriya. Sorry to have you come here at the last sec." Ryuji nodded. He was sitting by a stack of classroom desks and chairs, sitting in one of the free chairs. "Though I'm kinda shocked. I didn't think you'd be all cozy with the student council prez." Well, you see, we used to be old friends from..." Izuku began to timidly explain, hoping that Ryuji wouldn't get the wrong idea about them. "Whoa, slow down, dude, it's fine," Ryuji assured, waving a hand in the air. "I just thought it was funny. She's such a prim and proper kind of chick, and you're the kid with a criminal record, right?" Izuku frowned at the mention of that again. "I shouldn't be surprised he knows too. Everyone seems to know now," he thought to himself, gripping his hand in frustration. "So the whole school knows now, huh?" Ryuji frowned. "Sorry, man. I didn't mean to get you down like that. If it helps, I kinda thought it makes you look cooler," Ryuji suggested with an awkward chuckle. Seeing that Izuku was still downcast, the faux blonde sighed and shook his head. "Sorry about that. It's fine. It's certainly not the worst thing to happen to me today, right?" Izuku laughed weakly, trying to brush it off. He would never be able to get rid of the thought entirely, but it helped if he would focus on another subject, especially when it was something that had given him powers, if only for a short while. "Yeah, that's definitely true," Ryuji nodded, leaning forward on his knees. "But damn, all that shit was so crazy. Was Kamoshida, the castle, and the cat? Are we sure it wasn't just a dream?" Izuku's expression hardened seriously, shaking his head. "It's safe to say that everything you saw was real, Sakamoto-senpai. As hard as it is to believe, we entered a world based on cognition." "Man, you say that, but that shit only confuses me more," Ryuji grumbled, scratching the top of his head. "I mean, it all felt so real, no doubt, but I don't know, do you think that heroes have to put up with this kind of shit?" Izuku gave it some thought, holding his chin. "It's not impossible that some heroes might know about it, but it's not likely many people do know of it as well." Looking back up at Ryuji, another question popped in his mind. "About that, have you seen Kamoshida-sensei? He was definitely unaware of what happened." "Yeah, I saw him today. That bastard." Ryuji spat in irritation. "Wait and said hi like nothing, too. That bastard should know exactly what happened in that castle, right?" Izuku took a moment to think this over again before shaking his head. "No, not necessarily. If what Morgana-san was saying is true, then even though it's the darkest part of his heart, it's still not technically him," Izuku explained as he looked back up at Ryuji. "That's fortunate, honestly, as it means he won't be looking for us for anything that happened in the castle." "Right. I think I get it," Ryuji hesitantly answered. Even though Izuku seemed to be able to understand all of what happened rather easily, he was still trying to play catch up. "Speaking of that jerk, the way he acted in that damn place made way too much sense. You said that's how the bastard views the school, right?" "That's right. Kamoshida-sensei truly thinks he is the ruler of this school. I still don't really know much about him, but based on what we saw, there's no denying it," Izuku confirmed for him, Ryuji biting his bottom lip in frustration. "That arrogant prick. He thinks he's some big shot just because he got a medal and took the volleyball team to nationals." Ryuji huffed in irritation. "But he treats his players like shit. No one's willing to say a damn thing about it, though." Izuku could only remain silent. Aside from the brief encounter with the real one and the very excruciating encounter in the world of cognition, he couldn't judge what actions that Kamoshida might have been like before. After taking a moment to cool off, Ryuji leaned forward and became more thoughtful rather than angry. "Do you think we might be able to go back to that world somehow?" Izuku's thoughts immediately went to the phone app. It had announced itself when they first left like it knew where they had gone. It certainly was the biggest possibility. "I think we might, but it'd be dangerous. But I do want to learn more about that place." "Yeah," Ryuji nodded, leaning back in his chair again and kicking his foot up over his knee. "But anyway, regardless of real or not, you really saved my ass in there. Twice, I think it was." He smiled, giving a genuinely appreciative grin. "Thanks for all that, man." Izuku blinked in surprise after hearing that before offering a kind smile of his own. "Of course. Thank you for sticking up for me the first time, too." "What little good that did. That power you pulled out really saved our asses, though." Ryuji chuckled, thinking back to the large being that came from Izuku. "Do you think you can still summon it? Maybe sort of like a quirk?" Izuku blinked, having not thought of that possibility. It wouldn't be outlandish to think that he might be able to after the day they had. Trying to focus on Carter now, Izuku tried to will him into existence, closing his eyes. He didn't feel any change, nor could he hear the Persona's voice again. With a sigh, Izuku shook his head. "I don't think so. It must only be in that world that it's possible. Well, that's a bummer. Would have been pretty damn cool to tote that around as your quirk. Ryuji shrugged, not thinking too much of it. Standing up from his seat, Ryuji stretched out. Well, that's really all I had to say about it. Sorry if I wasted your time. No, it's alright. Really, I wanted to talk about what happened as well. After all that, I don't think we can just brush it off as a dream. Yeah, I guess you got a point on that one. Ryuji nodded in agreement before giving a small grin. But hey, after all the shit we've been through in one day, I think I like you. You're pretty damn gutsy for a kid who acts so meek. He chuckled, Izuku laughing sheepishly in response. From now on, if you don't mind, we can be partners in crime. Everyone looks down on us anyway, so we might as well become troublemaking pals, right? While Izuku wasn't one to really cause trouble, he understood what Ryuji was saying. I'd really appreciate that, Sakamoto-senpai. Alright, enough with the senpai stuff. Ryuji chuckled, stuffing his hands in his pockets. You can call me Ryuji from now on. If you don't mind, I'll call you Izuku. There's no need to act all formal if we're going to be pals. The notion seemed to throw Izuku in a strange place. It had been a long time since he had actually called someone by their full first name. Sure, I can try and do that, Ryuji-senpai. Well, man, no need to bust a vein over it. Take your time. Ryuji replied, waving a hand dismissively. Anyway, I'm gonna head back. I'm pretty sure you're worse off, but I'm tired as hell. You should get going too. Izuku wouldn't argue with that. He felt like he could sleep for a week after escaping that place, not to mention how tired he felt mentally after first summoning his persona and his trying day at school. It would be a long ride home on the train. Alright then, I'll see you later, Ryuji-senpai, dude, seriously, take your time with it. After a long trip on the train spent forcing himself to stay awake, Izuku finally arrived at LeBlanc, gulping in fear of what his current guardian might say. He may have been exhausted physically, mentally, and emotionally, but the thought of the scolding he was about to receive left him wide awake. With bated breath, Izuku pushed the door open and walked inside. The store was empty except for Sojiro, which meant that Izuku wasn't going to be spared the earful he expected to hear. The glare that Sojiro gave the moment their eyes met didn't help either. So I got an interesting call from your school today. Sojiro skipped the niceties and crossed his arms. Care to explain what happened? I'm sorry, Sakura-san. I got lost on the way to school. Izuku lied again, unable to come up with anything better. He was a bad liar to begin with. Sojiro was able to pick that up pretty quickly. Convenient story to have. Just because you're in a new town doesn't mean you can just get lost so easily. Sojiro huffed, shaking his head. Look, you understand what it means to be on probation, right? You mess up and your life is over. I'm not gonna lord over you and make you some sort of model student, but do enough that you get through the year at least. Yes, Sakura-san. Sorry for causing you trouble. Izuku apologized again. His guardian was tempted to lay into him a bit more, but found Izuku's expression disarming. Alright, I think that's enough suffering for you. Go on up and get some rest, Sojiro ordered, picking up the remote to the television and turning it off. Even if running through Kamoshida's palace left him starving, Izuku found the prospect of sleep far more appealing. He moved forward to climb the stairs before stopping at the foot of the staircase, glancing back at Sojiro. The shopkeep raised a brow, leaning against the bar. What's up? Sakura-san, Izuku began, biting the inside of his cheek. How easy is it to leak someone's criminal record? Sojiro raised a brow at this. What are you... Before he could continue, his phone rang in his pocket. Sojiro pulled it out and answered. Sorry I'm running late. I'll be there soon, okay? Yeah, I know, the usual, right? He looked back at the stairs, only to find that Izuku had already started to head up. Something was obviously eating at the green-haired teen, and Sojiro couldn't help but feel a bit bothered about it. I hope that kid's not getting into some real trouble. Izuku wasn't surprised when he found himself waking up in a familiar cell. After the day he had, he expected the dream to come back with a vengeance. Sitting up on his bunk, Izuku rubbed his face. Despite the fact that this place was supposedly between dreams and reality, he certainly still felt tired. On your feet, inmate. Our master wishes to speak to you. Caroline snapped, smacking her baton against the bars of his cell. Izuku didn't try to argue, only standing from the bench before walking up to the bars. It would be wise to listen carefully to what our master has to say, Justine suggested, her expression unchanging. So I guess this dream isn't a joke then, Izuku admitted, glancing around the cell before looking at Igor. What do you want from me? We have said it before, have we not? To rehabilitate you, Igor vaguely explained, chuckling darkly in amusement. I see that you have finally awoken to your powers. Now we can truly begin the process of rehabilitation. What does my persona in the cognitive world have to do with all of this? Izuku asked, hands gripping the bars. Why am I supposedly destined for ruin? There's no need for you to understand everything just yet. Igor chuckled again, causing Izuku to slump against the bars in frustration. Just know that you will now be training in the use of your personas. Consider them a mask, one to protect your heart like armor from worldly threats. I have high expectations for you. Expectations? For what? Izuku asked again, though feared what Igor might answer with, "There is no need to worry. You will know in due time." He was expecting such a vague answer. Ah, while we're on such matters, are you appreciating the Metaverse Navigator? Igor asked. Using it allows you to traverse from your world to the palaces, or the cognitive world, as you have aptly described it. Izuku thought it over for a moment before understanding. So the app on my phone is how to get to that world. Though I didn't realize it was you who gave it to me. Izuku immediately understood. At least you're quick on the uptake, inmate. Try and keep that up so we don't have to repeat ourselves. Caroline scoffed, crossing her arms as she regarded the prisoner. You are correct. I have provided it for you so that you may train your abilities as a thief. Igor explained. The word thief caught Izuku's attention. Appreciate what is given to you, inmate, and put it to good use, Caroline ordered, Izuku glancing at her in question. Wait, a thief? But aren't you trying to rehabilitate me for... We are here to ensure that you become a good thief. That is the main purpose of your rehabilitation, Justine explained this time, her words serving to confuse Izuku only more. To travel through the metaverse alone can be quite weary, which is why, should you find others who might be of use to you, I will also grant them this navigator. Igor went on to explain. So wait, other people can get personas aside from me and Morgana-san? Izuku inquired further. It was easy enough for him to guess, but he wanted to hear it for himself. I suppose you shall find out soon enough. Of course, he had to answer in the most cryptic way possible. Izuku was a patient person, but even he had to face fault at that. Straighten out that face of yours, inmate, Caroline snapped, smacking her baton against the bars again and making Izuku jump. It's time for you to head back, so enjoy your free time. Izuku wanted to ask more questions, but given how Igor was dodging everything he was asked, it didn't seem to matter. Wordlessly, he returned to the bunk and lay down, immediately falling back to sleep, only to wake up and start another school day. Sitting up in his bed, Izuku knew that it was inevitable, even with Igor and the twins telling him to do so. Izuku wanted to return to that world as well. He wanted answers. He wanted to know all about these powers that he had. But there was one thing he wanted to know above all else. Can I use my persona to help people? Classes had come and gone for Izuku, unlike the day before. He made sure to be on time. The classes were easy enough at this point, so he didn't have to take many notes. Instead, his mind was occupied with returning to that world. Even as he continued to hear the whispers meandering through his classes in the hallways, Izuku dismissed them entirely. He was on a mission, and once school was over, he could officially begin. It helped that the place he needed to go was already available to him. He wouldn't have to worry about finding his way back. If the app were to take him directly to the palace like before, then all he would need to do was activate it in a safe location. The school gate should work perfectly. Hey there, Takamaki. Izuku blinked as he heard the familiar voice, stopping his stride down the stairs. Ahead of him on the second floor, he could see the platinum blonde he had briefly talked to the day before, and whom he easily heard before, came Kamoshida. You headed home? Let me give you a ride. With all these accidents going on, you'd be safer hitching a ride with me, the coach suggested in a kind voice. To Izuku, though, his voice still seemed to ring in his ear with that condescending tone of a pompous king. No thanks. I actually have to go to a photo shoot. It's for the summer magazine special, so I can't miss it. The Kamiki, as Izuku easily guessed, deflected his offer, though she looked a bit tired. Or maybe she was forcing herself to talk to him. Kamoshida seemed to be off-put by her rejection, his face straining for a moment with annoyance. He was able to contort this into a look of concern and said, Hey now, don't work yourself too hard, okay? You haven't been feeling well after all, right? Yeah, I want to go see a doctor about it, but I've just been busy. Juggling school and work has kinda distracted me, Takamaki answered. As far as Izuku could tell, Takamaki was doing her best to avoid direct eye contact. Sorry to worry you. I'm sure you've also been lonely. I feel bad about keeping Suzui at practice all day. That's why I asked you out in the first place, after all. Izuku couldn't stop his eyes from widening. A teacher dating a student? And Kamoshida, of all people? If everything that he learned the previous day was to be believed, Kamoshida was definitely no charity case. It wouldn't be a surprise to the green-haired teen if it was for something far more lecherous. Oh, and a word of warning to you. Careful around the new transfer student. He's got a criminal record after all. Wait, it was Kamoshida Sensei who. Biting his bottom lip, Izuku felt confusion and anger well up inside of him. What had he done to warrant that? Did Kamoshida know that they had gone to his castle? Or could it have been that he was just that petty? Hey. Izuku was pulled from his thoughts when he realized that Kamoshida was now glaring at him through narrowed eyes, the teen gulping in fear. He hadn't realized that the two had finished talking, and Kamoshida had now found him eavesdropping. Do you have a problem? Izuku took a moment to find his voice, grinding his teeth for a moment before glaring back, despite the sweat and shaking he did. Did you Did you tell people about my record? Izuku forced himself to say, despite his fear. Kamoshida merely raised a brow before offering a dumb look and shrugging. Now why would I do that? What kind of irresponsible teacher would that make me? He asked, his tone conveying no small amount of amusement. There was no denying it now. Kamoshida was the one who did it. A teacher had outed him for no reason at all. It was clear he couldn't remember a thing about the castle, but even so, he was still a rotten person. Seeing that Izuku wasn't going to say more, Kamoshida scoffed and began walking up the stairs. He clamped down hard on Izuku's shoulder, causing the teen to instinctively pull away from the teacher. Try not to cause any trouble, got it? Or else I'll toss your ass out of this school myself. Kamoshida chuckled before letting him go and continuing up the stairs. Izuku felt his frustration bubbling up again, gripping the strap of his school bag. What reason could a teacher have for wanting to ruin a student's school life? It made no sense. No matter how much Izuku thought about it, Kamoshida had no reason to do such a thing to him. He shook his head. There was no use thinking about it now. If he was going to go through with his plan, Izuku knew he might find some answers there. There's nothing left to do but go. With his resolve strengthened, Izuku inhaled a heavy breath and released, stepping down the steps and heading for the front gate. Pulling his phone out, Izuku opened the app, preparing to depart for the world of cognition. I hope Morgana-san is there to help me out. Yo! Izuku was pulled from his thoughts when he heard that voice, glancing up from his phone to see Ryuji hanging out by the gate. Ah, Ryuji-senpai. Close enough. Ryuji shrugged before offering a grin. You look like a man on a mission, though. Plan to head to the other world? Izuku blinked, surprised that Ryuji was able to pick up on his intentions. Hardening his brow, Izuku nodded. Yeah, I want to learn more about my powers. I want to know if I can use them for something better. At the same time, I also want to learn about that castle and Kamoshida Sensei. Same here. Well, on the second part at least. Ryuji declared, nodding in agreement. Just thinking about all that shit we saw inside of Kamoshida's head pisses me off. I want to know more about it. Izuku frowned in concern, turning to Ryuji. Ryuji-senpai, if you go, it could be very dangerous. I'll do what I can to protect you, but the risks are still very high. I know. I hate that I can't do much to help you, but I need to know about what's going on with that bastard. If it helps, I also brought a few things that could help you out at least. Ryuji explained, shaking his school bag. It looked a bit fatter than the day before. Ryuji-senpai, why do you hate Kamoshida-sensei so much? Izuku couldn't help but ask. He didn't want to be nosy, but Ryuji's disdain for the teacher was stronger than he first realized. The faux blonde glanced at Izuku and bit his lip, struggling to come straight out and admit his reason. Look, I owe you a lot, man, and I'll tell you sometime, just after we go to the castle, okay? Ryuji reasoned with Izuku. Seeing how personal this was for Ryuji, Izuku nodded in understanding. I won't push you to tell me if you don't want, Ryuji-senpai. Nah, after everything I gotta tell you, I feel. Just once we're done with this place, okay? Ryuji smiled, appreciative of Izuku's understanding. So let's get going. I think we should go around the same place we came through last time, from the... Actually, I think I figured out how to take us there, Izuku informed him, stopping Ryuji on his tracks. Pulling up his phone, he showed the blonde the app of the black and red eye design. Yesterday this app was open on my phone. When we had gotten out of that place, it announced to us that we had returned to the real world, remember? Oh yeah, you're right, Ryuji nodded, remembering his outburst the moment they had gotten back. That thing did say that. So you think you can get us back to the castle? Let me see. Izuku muttered, opening the app. From what he could tell, it was a navigation app, mapping out the surrounding area in a red format. Looking through the search history, it was a list of words in one input. Kamoshida was among them, as well as castle, pervert, and Shujin. I think this is it. I'm going to press the button. Once I do, I think that it'll send us there, Ryuji-senpai. Alright, I'm ready. Take us in. Ryuji nodded with determination, bending his knees like he was preparing for a fight. Izuku nodded, quickly pressing the information that was previously used. Kamoshida, Shujin Academy, pervert, castle. The app started to list off before pinging, beginning navigation. Here we go, Ryuji breathed out, most likely trying to calm his nerves. The air shimmered and fluxed around them, the two gazing around their surroundings before the world started to shift. Glancing up at the school, Izuku and Ryuji saw the building melt away and be replaced by the familiar castle from before. Damn, it worked all right. Ryuji muttered in somewhat of his own disbelief. Part of me still thought it was some sort of dream, but guess there's no denying it now. We should be careful. We don't want to get overwhelmed by the shadows like last time, Ryuji-senpai, Izuku suggested. We should find— Hey, your clothes changed again, Ryuji pointed out, causing Izuku to blink. Looking down, he confirmed the punk's words. His clothes had transformed into the outfit from the day before. What the hell do you think that's about? I'm not sure, but this at least means I'll be able to fight with my persona, Izuku mumbled, glancing over his outfit before looking back up at the castle. Anyway, we should get going before— Hey, you two! Looking down, they were met with a familiar large-headed cat, Morgana. I knew you'd come back, so here for some answers. To be continued. Carter's affinities. Physical, neutral. Gunfire, neutral. Fire, resistant. Ice, weak. Wind, neutral. Electricity, neutral. Nuclear, neutral. Psychokinetic, neutral. Bless, null. Curse, resistant.